Hi, we're Shannon and Jerry Arner.
And our dog, Betty White.
Your hosts of the Arner Adventures podcast.
Could we have named it something more creative? Probably. But it's the name of our blog. It's our last name. We're on an adventure. Yada, yada, yada. After running our own business, working 24/7.
And don't forget a mental breakdown in between.
We made a lifestyle change and decided to make the most out of life.
We sold our house, most of our belongings, downsized, and moved to the coast.
We live life minimally, but fully.
We live each day as an adventure.
This show will help you learn how to live life more fully, with more intention, by experiencing more, and with less stuff.
We'll talk about our own experiences, interview others who have much to share by creating a spark in our lives.
Some days we'll share real-life ongoings of what we're going through, and others will talk about our favorite flavor of waffle.
Come join our adventure.
It's the Arner Adventures Podcast. Hello, everyone. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Shannon.
Betty White, our golden gal, is hanging here with us, and we're back for episode 64 of the Arner Adventures Podcast.
Happy March, everybody! Spring is on the horizon.
This is a Shannon and Jerry focused episode today on a topic that we think is a great diversion from any stressors of life and a topic of current events. But before we get to it, let's get to our review of the week.
Yes, let's. Our review comes from Morgan Hap25. Morgan says, "What a great podcast. So many inspirational stories, one after the other. The alignment with each journey toward going after what you want in life is lovely to hear."
Well, thank you, Morgan. We really appreciate you taking the time to leave us a review. You're going to receive a free personalized yoga workshop from Murdaugh.
Murdaugh is a women-led team of licensed Ayurveda and yoga professionals helping women achieve their health goals through natural and holistic means. If you would like to receive a free personalized yoga workshop from Murdaugh like Morgan, please leave us a 5-star review rating for the chance to be our review of the week. We really appreciate it. And if you would like more information on Murdaugh, head over to murdaughhealth.com or click the link in the show notes. Okay, so today's podcast, you may have seen in the title, this is a big diversion from our normal topics, but living here in the South, the Murdaugh Murders case is a big deal. Jerry and I are pretty big fans of shows like Dateline, 2020, 48 Hours, those true crime shows, people murdered all the time.
Yeah. There's something about stories like that that can just put your problems right into perspective.
That's true. It's a current event. Well, depending on where you are listening to this, we have found that some of the chit chats before our guest interviews get started recently, they've begun with people asking about it because they think that we live near where it's all going on. Because, we live in Beaufort, North Carolina, and people see it and they go, "Oh, you live where the Murdaugh Murders thing is happening." We're like, "No, that's Beaufort, South Carolina. It's spelled the same way, pronounced differently. We're in Beaufort, they're in Beaufort. It's two different places."
Yeah, and we've been following the Murdaugh trial closely, which is being compared to the popularity of the OJ trial. Again, depending on when you're listening to this, at this time of this recording, the jury is in deliberations.
Quick interruption here, just to remind you that at the end of this episode, the verdict came in. So make sure you stay tuned until the end of the episode. It's so exciting. We've been asked numerous times, what is the best way to get caught up on what the Murdaugh Murders sitch is all about? Well, we have some resources for you if you've been living under some rock somewhere. But before we get into them, we have a special correspondent who's going to be joining us today.
Ladies and gentlemen, amateur sleuth, Murdaugh Murders expert, Shannon's mom.
Mom, thank you for being with us today.
I'm so excited. I am really excited. Let's bring the jury in.
Mom is coming to us from Hampton, South Carolina. Just kidding. She would love to be down there where it's all going on.
When the trial first started, there wasn't that many people in the courtroom. And I seriously got out my maps and was figuring out how long it would take me to get down there so I could sit in the courtroom. And I especially would like to be there, while things were going on right now, because the queen of everything, Nancy Grace, is down there and she's my idol.
But you know what? I'm willing to put money on the fact that you know more about this case than she does.
I might. So you want to start out with bombshell tonight?
Yes. Okay. So before we get into our resources, because I think you are our biggest resource, let's tell the folks who are maybe listening on their way into work. And again, they've been living under a rock. They have no idea. Or, okay, let's give them a little bit of credit. They
live in Alaska.
They live in Alaska. They came on the Arner Adventures podcast when I was talking about our Alaskan cruise. And so they live in Alaska, or they live out west somewhere, and they hear about Murdaugh Murders, and they're just like, what is that? If someone's listening right now, they're on their drive to work. They don't have a lot of time because they're really fortunate. They don't have a long commute, and they want a Cliff's Notes version of what in the world is going on down there in Hampton, South Carolina. What can you tell them about the Murdaugh murders?
Well, it's so fascinating. So the first thing it's 6 kids got on a boat one night, including Paul, the younger son of Alex Murdaugh, who's on trial right now for the death of his son and his wife. So they got on a boat one night. They were going out partying. All of them were underage, shouldn't have been drinking. They did. Got back on the boat to head back home. And Paul, who, when he drinks and gets out of control, apparently his hands turn into Edward Scissorhands. And then he is called Timmy. So he became Timmy that night, drove the boat in an absolutely irresponsible manner, and then crashed the boat into a piling of, I don't know how you say that, piling or pylon. Not sure which one that is.
I think it's piling, Piling, right?
I feel like I've heard it both ways.
But actually, I feel like people here call it piling, like a piling.
Let's say that the part that's the brace under the pier is the pylon, and the piling is the big rocks that they ended up on. Okay, so anyway, he hit the bridge, and everybody went everywhere. 3 of them went into the water. 3 of them ended up on the boat, 2 with some very serious injuries. 1 girl, Mallory Beach, was thrown. They didn't find her for 8 days, and of course she perished. It got to be an investigation that got started, and what got thrown into the mix was that he was a Murdaugh, or Murdoch, however you want to say it. He's all 3. They are a very prominent legal family. They have been in the legal system down there for over 100 years, being the assistant solicitor, the solicitor, all of that, which for us is like the district attorney. So prosecution. So anyway, they've been in law for I don't know how long. So Alex Murdaugh has 2 brothers and 1 sister, and the sister is really a bitch. But the 3 of the 3 brothers, 2 of them became lawyers, and they have wielded such power over this is some crazy mess. So it unfolded a lot of information about Alex's finances, and when everything was about to blow apart on him, he kills, and I say, yes, he's guilty. He killed his son and his wife. I don't know why they didn't call me to go ahead and do the prosecution's job. And I damn sure could have closed it so much better than the ones that did. But I have to say, the one that did the final closing today was very good. He should have been up there. He's very animated, all of that stuff, and he should have closed that.
Yeah.
But I think he drove the point home. So there's a big thing going. There's separate charge and trial going on civilly with all of his financial stuff, which is a hot mess, taking millions of dollars from cases where you've got paraplegics, quadriplegics, deaths in the family. You've got all kinds of stuff that he took money from their settlements and then told them they got less.
We've introduced you to Murdaugh, a women-led team of licensed Ayurveda and yoga professionals helping women achieve their health goals through natural and holistic means. Murdaugh is not a fad diet or a fancy app, though we do love their app. It's truly a way of life. Murdaugh helps you to learn and understand the Ayurvedic lifestyle and yoga practices to have a better quality of life. This journey has just begun, but I learned this week that my Ayurvedic body type is Pitta. I might be saying that right. With that, I am learning that Pitta is the dosha of the fire and water elements. I'm excited to continue learning more about the doshas, how to balance them, how to be more mindful about my wellness, and how yoga can be so beneficial for my mindset and even gut health. Murdaugh is offering our listeners a free 15-minute consult to address your health concerns naturally through the Ayurvedic lifestyle. You can book with the link in the show notes and save when you move forward with one of their programs. Use code NIRVA20, that is NIRVA 20. You can also visit arneradventures.com/Murdaugh for more info. I look forward to hearing more about your journey with Murdaugh. And now back to the show.
Or some of them never saw a dime, said it didn't work, but he was pocketing that money. So separate charges, separate trials are going to be going on, but right now he had to answer for the murders of his son and wife. What the prosecution did was try to bring in the financial stuff, which I don't know. I kind of think it's let it open for a really good appeal, but because it was kind of a trial within a trial. I know that's not making a whole lot of sense now, but just know that all of these different things are coming to a head into a trial. He did such vile things that I think he was very upset with Paul because the boat crash was going to open up everything in his life and his whole house of cards was going to come tumbling down. So anyway, they charged him. I don't see how you could not charge him, because of all of the information that has come out. Now, if I was prosecuting this, one of the big pieces of evidence was it's like Paul was speaking from the grave. He filmed a little video, back and forth with one of his friends. His dad never knew it was being taped, and then he was killed right after it. They didn't find that on the phone until they had forensics getting all in there and all that stuff. But Alec kept saying, the father kept saying that he didn't know for like 2 hours where they were and what was going on with them and what they were doing. Comes back from his mom's house and finds them there dead. And he calls 911. And the first thing he says, my son and my wife have been hurt badly. Grammar needs to be cleaned up quite a bit. And that, I want to make sure that's everybody's understanding that is not indicative of the intelligence of Southerners.
We're going to get into that a little bit later too.
Okay. So
I do kind of wonder what kind of law degree he had where he got to just pass basic English courses.
I don't know. I have no idea what he's doing. I kind of think he wants to make it like he's down home and likable, which everybody says he was likable. And I don't know, when he got on the stand, which that's another thing, he got on the stand. But when he got on the stand, you could see where his charisma came from. He's lying like a dog, but he's still
absolutely
a lot of charisma. But the trial is going on. Afterwards, it's going to be the financials. I wish they'd let me try it because I'd make a fortune off the fees, because he is downright guilty. And how we know that is because he got up on the stand in his murder criminal trial, and admitted to everything.
And there's over 90 charges, right?
Yes.
Well, wait a minute. Pause. He did not admit to everything. He didn't admit that he killed them. Let's make sure that people who understand.
Financials.
He admitted to them, and he admitted that he had lied about not being down there at the kennels and all that when he said he was not. But he had to, because he knew that the cell phone data and Paul's Snapchat showed that he was down there. So he had to admit to it.
And when they showed it to him, he probably just wanted to pass out because they
shit his pants right there.
They had 3 interviews with him before they charged him. The second interview, they mentioned that they had a video that he had no idea Paul had sent out to a bunch of the friends, which was a Snapchat of his dad going down to, it was really a sapling tree that they were trying to save because it wasn't standing up. It wasn't gaining hold in the ground. They had put a little tube-like thing up and put some like cable things, but it was just string to try to hold it up. Well, the strings broke, and he and Paul went down there, and Paul was filming him, unbeknownst to Alec, in the clothes that are missing because they are the murder clothes.
Right.
Yes. But he was laughing because every time Alec turned it loose, it was just falling back over. And Alec says, well, I think it's doing better. And the thing is toppled over. But he sent that out to his friends, but Alec did not know it. So in the second interview that they did with him, they brought out something. Do you remember? And I'm trying to say, I think they used this exact words. You remember being with Paul and you were playing with a tree, and he sits there for this long pause, playing with a tree? And they said, yeah. So they showed it to him. That man was the quietest he's ever been in his whole life. Because I know the wheels were turning and he was trying to figure out what was I going to say. I'm in
what lie do I tell this time? And what did he say? What tangled web we weave.
On the stand, he said in his defense, oh, what a tangled web we weave. Yes. And it was a knot of tangles. They brought that up. But then in the third interview, they asked him if he had been down at the kennels. And he said no. And he kept saying no, and lying and lying and lying. And then they brought it out in court. And you hear his voice. Well, they brought in family member. They brought in friends of Paul. They brought in his law partners, all of this stuff. And they all said it was Alec on the video. But there was an interesting story there about the dog, Bubba, and the chicken. You might rewind this a few times and you'll get it all together. Yes. There are so many twists and turns, but there is a story about a chicken. Maggie is on the video, but she thinks it's a guinea. I still don't know what the difference is.
I don't know what a guinea is.
I don't know. I've heard it down in the South, those things, but I really think it's a chicken, but I don't know. Is it a female chicken? I have no idea. So we could look that up. I kept saying I was going to, but I forgot. And I also don't want to make light of the fact that there were 2 brutal murders.
I was laughing earlier talking about him being Timmy right at the boat wreck, and Mallory did lose her life. And so, yes, there was a third. There are a lot of lives lost, which we're going to get to those as well.
Lives lost. It was not just that. He decided he wanted to take the stand. And his lawyer, Griffin and Harpootlian's also a state senator in South Carolina. I don't think for long. I have a nickname for him, Pooter. That's what I call him, is Pooter. Pooter really needs to go home and just retire. But I personally think he wanted to go out on this big trial, and he thought for sure he was going to win it. Judge asked Alec if he was sure he wanted to testify, knowing that, he had talked to his lawyers and all that. Pooter says, Judge, he won't talk to me, and that really hurts my feelings.
I know.
It's like famous legend down there. It hurts my feelings.
It's a big spider web of lies, and the Gloria Satterfield case, you can very well look at it and assume that Alec set that up for Gloria to be killed, to collect the money. You can also, there's the Stephen Smith case, where we think that Buster was involved in that and they covered it up.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of things that you learn about it as you go through. But all of it came about because of Mallory. All of it came about because of Mallory.
Yeah.
But Paul and his getting in trouble all the time, but mainly that the boat crash, I think, is where the hatred from Alex came from, and that Paul called him out on his pill popping.
I think it was one of the interviews or 911 call where he says in the background something to the effect like, "Why did you do this, Paul?" or something like that, which never got picked up. So I think that Paul was going to cost them a fortune, and he knew he was going to get prison time, and that was going to bring their name down, but it was also going to bring his financial situation to life. No pun intended, but yes, really. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul.
This episode is brought to you by Base.
Listen, if there's one thing that bugs us to no end, it is traveling with someone who checks their luggage.
What a waste of time and money. First, you should just take less, and you can grab our travel prep list at arneradventures.com to pack smarter.
But one of the best resources we use is our Base carry-on rollers, which allow us to carry everything we need. And since it's the carry-on size, you don't have to check it.
I think the most common questions we get from people is how we avoid checking our luggage. And we always say, pack smarter and Base.
Head over to arneradventures.com/base. That's BEIS to grab the link to save $15 off of your first purchase.
You're not going to regret this purchase. Our family and friends and anyone who travels with us now has Base luggage.
Really, because they got tired of me complaining about them wasting my time.
That is arneradventures.com/base to grab the link there. It's also in the show notes.
Happy travels. And now back to the show.
And it really went down that way. So he was very mad at Paul, and he knew that if Paul went away, that a lot of his financial things may not come to light.
Right. Yeah. If it had all gone as planned.
Right.
And let's not forget, there's also the situation where he tried to fake that he was shot in the head.
Yes, the time that he committed suicide.
Here's the real question. Why is his name Alex Murdaugh, Murdaugh, but we're calling him Alex Murdaugh?
We don't know why, but he calls himself Alex. And
I know.
But I'm surprised it's not Alex, but we'll get to that. But he calls himself Murdaugh. But
I've also heard him correct it as Murdaugh. I've heard him say Murdaugh before.
And what did he say to Waters on the stand? I'll answer to anything. If you want me to say this, I'll say this. If you want me to call him Paul, I'll call him Paul. And I don't know if you noticed that anytime they brought up something about Maggie and Paul, especially like the night of, he would take Kleenex and he would hit his nose like he was trying to wipe the snot away. He would hit his nose so hard, and he would wipe the tears under his eyes so hard. Well, if you sit here and push on your eyes really hard, you're gonna get tears, And I am convinced that he took some kind of decongestant before any time he would cry, because it was so gross watching this man snot it all up.
And then
he would wipe the table. He would wipe the table. I'm sorry, I don't want to see that.
Well, and the sound of it, I would always, when he would get on the stand or whenever he would talk in his interviews, I would always say, why won't someone just give him a Mucinex?
Mm-hmm.
Like, dry the shit up. It's disgusting.
So in his interview in the car that night, he would get, and then
that sounded just like him.
Yes, he would spit.
And he opened the door and said, "Can I open the door?" and spit?
Can I open the door? And then he would just again. It got to be where you weren't listening to what he was saying. You were just watching his tics.
Yeah.
I have no sympathy for him. I hope he's in prison with no Sudafed or anything like that. Yeah.
Let's get into the resources, because I know more of this chit chat's going to come up as we get through them.
Yeah.
So the resources that we have utilized between the three of us, I know that Jerry hasn't quite.
I've learned so much already just in this conversation.
The first one, and let's just talk about this, that my cousin Jenna, who's probably listening to this, Yeah, my mom's niece. She she said to me, I guess she was talking to both of us and was talking about the podcast, which is gonna be the second one. But she said, you guys have to listen to this podcast. And I was like, what is the Murdaugh Murders? I had apparently been living under a rock for a little bit. And she's like, what? You don't know about the Murdaugh Murders? And I was like, no. She said the guy who killed his wife. See, we already knew. The guy who killed his wife and his son. I was like, no, I don't know. She said, you have to go and watch. You need a 101. You need to go and watch the Dateline about it before you get into the podcast. So our number one resource is the Dateline Dark Waters. I wish that Keith Morrison would have been the host.
Oh, yeah. I wish he would too. That's so good. Maybe he'll do another one.
He was not the host, unfortunately, but we do think, and we're going to link all of these down in the show notes, we do think that this should be the intro to the case. We think, and it's been a while since we all three saw it, so we can't quite remember the details. We do know that the ending does not bring you anywhere near where we are today, because I'm pretty sure he had not even been arrested for the murders.
No, he hadn't. It was more, I think, of the power that the Murdaughs wielded down
and the boat crash and all that,
and then the murders. Yeah, but yeah, it's basic. It's 101.
But it's good.
Yeah, everything attached to this thing is good. Yeah, it's one of those very tragic things that brings you in. Excuse me. It brings you in, it hooks you, and you just can't walk away from it. I have spent the last 6 weeks glued to TV, and if I had to leave, I was very upset, and I would have it on YouTube Live, and I'd have my earbuds in.
Can I tell the story about somebody coming over and you
I'm an open book. I've said that before.
So Mom texted me and said that she was going to have some guests come over unexpectedly, and asked me if I thought it would be okay if she left her earbuds in to listen to the trial, because she just could not listen, because she just could not be interrupted.
Yeah. And what would bother me the most is if I did get interrupted during the day, I would slam my fist on something, say something ugly, and then I would have to put it on pause. And so at the end of the day, when the trial was really over at 5, I'm still having to watch it, because I can't miss anything. I can't miss it. How am I going to report it to anybody?
Right.
And when those people came over that I wanted to listen to it, I brought up and watching the Murdaugh Murders, and they just looked at me like I was crazy. And I thought, well, okay, you're not interesting.
So the second one that is really probably the most in depth, I don't know, Jerry, you're not as familiar with it. Mom, I know you are, is the Murdaugh Murders podcast.
Oh God, yeah.
This is the most in depth. You have to have a lot of time on your hands. Or I don't know. I would say you just have to have a lengthy amount of time to invest. Like you could listen to it while you're walking, but just understand you're not going to get the whole scope of everything very quickly, right, Mom?
No, there's too much. If you really want an in-depth look at this story, you need to go back to number 1.
Yes.
But if you did number 1, you're going to end up with, if you listen for 8 hours a day, it would be probably into 3 weeks before you'd get them all done.
It take longer than that.
It might.
She's a journalist, Mandy Matney.
Matney. Yeah, it's spelled
Mandy Matney.
Yeah.
She is a journalist from the area. So she is, boots on the ground, knows exactly what's going on, but she has every single detail from, she's been investigating the Murdaugh family for over 4 years. The boat crash, and then she was there after the boat crash. Then she started investigating what happened with the murders. Then she dug into the Gloria Satterfield, then the Stephen Smith, then what went on with the financials. But then she is where we started hearing the jailhouse tapes.
Yes, those are fascinating. Those are absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that she got so good at what she did, messing with those powerful people down there, that even Pooter said in one of the hearings that he named her by name. So she was making waves down there.
Yeah.
So I say that this girl, strictly alone, this girl brought this to the media and to national attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're in Alaska, you may not have heard about this. But if you're in the South, you know about this.
Yeah, I agree. This episode is brought to you by Southern Oak Artisan.
Southern Oak Artisan makes 100% natural soy candles that are not only aesthetically pleasing, but are safe to breathe, since they are made with non-toxic ingredients, and they're not overwhelming like other candles you may be used to.
Between morning brew, lemon bake, lavender, there's just so many scents to choose from.
Southern Oak Artisan 100% natural soy candles are handmade in our home state here in North Carolina, but lucky you, they ship all over the U.S.
Yes, lucky indeed. Head over to arneradventures.com/Southern Oak Artisan, where you can grab our discount code and link to save on your soy candle purchase.
That's arneradventures.com/Southern Oak Artisan. It's also in the show notes.
And now back to the show. Okay, Terry, we're starting to get into things you know about.
Oh, good.
You ready? Yeah. Okay. So this is the one that I feel like when people are asking us about it, they're like, the Netflix documentary. So Murdaugh Murders, A Southern Scandal. This is the Netflix documentary.
The Netflix documentary. Yeah, that was a good one.
I enjoyed this one the most.
Yeah, the same guys who created, if anybody saw that documentary about Fire Festival.
Yeah, the Fire Festival was where the guy, and I can't remember his name, got all the influencers and all the people to pay money as sponsors, and he kind of kept the money, and then the festival never happened on some island somewhere, and all these influencers ended up being stranded. It was a big mess.
Yeah,
but it was a good documentary.
It was a good documentary. The same guys.
They did something else for Netflix too.
Yeah, but this was the first.
They took a different spin.
They took a different. It was the first time we'd heard from the kids from the boat crash.
Yeah, from the boat crash, and we learned so much that we did not know because they remained quiet. The three girls hired this one attorney. His last name was Tinsley. I can't think right now. What is Mark? Mark. Yeah, this guy was so damn good that I want to go over and over and over YouTube clips of his testimony. He messed the defense up so bad when he said something about he had filed something and they were like, no, you didn't. And he says, do you want to see it? He pulls it out of his coat pocket. It was a motion or something that was granted by a judge and hands it to them. And they're doing all kinds of backpedaling, trying to say, oh, it was not that. Oh, it was not that. And he says, well, I disagree with you. He was so good. So if I have anything that happens, I want this guy to work my claim. I enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. I was talking to nobody. I was in here because my husband, he just kept saying he wasn't invested until the other day when he gave his theory. And then you could tell he was. It
was a pretty in-depth theory too.
In-depth, and it made sense.
Yes.
It made more sense than a 5'2" shooter.
Maybe we'll read it on here in just a second. The fourth one and final resource is Low Country, the Murdaugh Dynasty.
Yes.
Now, this is the HBO Max take on the case. This is where we also hear from Anthony Cook, who was one of the kids, who was the boyfriend of Mallory, who passed away, was lost not lost, they found her body from the boat crash. Interestingly enough, we also hear from Loudmouth Griffin, who is Alex Murdaugh's attorney.
Yes. He said, he said today, I wasn't interviewed in that. Yes, he was. He lied.
He was all over that.
Lied in closing statements. Don't even start with anything else. Your whole defense team and client are the biggest liars that's walked the face of this.
The judge even saw it. The judge even said, when you're on HBO on a special, that is public knowledge.
What it ended up being, you heard a lot about Mallory and Anthony, which was like the sweetest little love story there was. But the thing that I sat in my living room and just burst out crying. He never left the docks, or he went down there every day. Finally, on the 8th day, he didn't go, but they found her. Some fishermen found her. But he was down there waiting, his arms in a sling. He was waiting for, them to report back up and see if they'd found her. And he looks over and he sees Paul. So Paul had come down there, and they're from a distance. And he said he knew that Paul's looking at him. So he looked at him, and Paul says, I love you, and I'm sorry. And Anthony said, which has got to be the sweetest soul in the world, he said, I love you too, but you need to go.
You and Anthony are so similar in that, and Jerry and I talked about this, and I told Jerry this. When people pass away, they all of a sudden become these perfect people. And I look at that, and this is maybe my warped mind. I don't know. I look at that and go, that's Paul, Alex's son, being just as manipulative as they have been their whole lives. So I don't look at that and go, that's trusting. This is the same kid who was laughing when Mallory was missing. So I don't like that at all. I wouldn't have given him the time of day.
I don't look at this as a Paul being nice situation. I'm talking about Anthony. Anthony, to be able to remember that person that he grew up with, that he liked before he became Timmy Scissorhands. Wasn't that weird the way he did it?
Hand? A robot, like a robot slash Scissorhands.
Yes,
it's the weirdest thing.
He wasn't a casual drinker either. He was the beer bongs and all that, and all the pictures they showed. He was quite the party boy.
Yeah. We have a fun bonus for you all. If you're looking for a drinking game, we have a Southern spin, one that we're not proud of. We talked about this earlier, that Alec has a way of making us in the South look not so great.
Yeah.
Again, like Jerry talked about, I don't know where his education came from. I mean, I'm not downing South Carolina, but I felt like it was University of South Carolina, which I think is a great school. I don't know where his law degree came from, but
I think it was Acme University Online.
Acme, where Bugs Bunny went. Bugs Bunny got his degree there.
I think he went to law school at South Carolina.
I think he did. Yeah.
I'm sure they're not proud of that, but we're going to link a video to Alex Murdaugh's testimony. It's about 4 hours long. You're going to have a pretty great night. But here's the thing. You're not going to make it through it, because you're going to drink when you hear the following words.
I want to say the words.
Okay.
And here we go. Paul, Ro, Hogs, or Bubba.
Bubba.
You are not going to make it through the end of his time on the stand. We promise that.
You'll last about 45 minutes of those 4 hours.
I mean, I have never heard such unbelievable mess. If I have ever heard, I had never even heard about, I'm going to go and look for hogs rooting down by Bubba, who was not barking, and I'm going to call Roro, and Paw was down there. I have never been so embarrassed to be a Southerner in my entire, no, I have been, but I was pretty embarrassed. I was pretty darn embarrassed.
Well, the thing is that when he got on the stand, and Waters, which is the prosecutor, asked him a question. It was like right off the bat. He said, Paw. Finally, Waters asked him, Paw? And he said, that's what I called Paul. He said, in none of the interviews or anything we've ever seen or discussions, we've never heard you call Pawpaw. And he said, and Roro? and that was one of Paul's friends, but I've never heard anybody anywhere ever talk about Roro until Alex said that on the stand. But everything became double words.
Yeah.
Which it reminds me of my mom, because her name was Mary Sue, and she would always tell people, my name is Mary Sue. I go by my double name. And she's from the South, and it's the only person I ever heard say that.
But she always went by Mary Sue. It was never sometimes it was Mary, and when she was on trial for murder, all of a sudden it was Mary Sue. It was not that.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to do a couple more things before we close out. We have a fact check here. It is piling, Piling, for the pier. So we all three now are a little bit smarter.
A little smarter.
Yep.
We are all three getting ready to be a little bit even more smarter. We can go and maybe tend to some chickens and some guinea down in South Carolina, because guinea is a guinea fowl. Like, so it's a bird. It's an FOWL, fowl, guinea fowl.
Right.
And the picture looked like a chicken.
Okay. So that makes sense that Maggie mistook it for a guinea.
By now, you have heard us talk quite a bit about Murdaugh, a women-led team of licensed Ayurveda and yoga professionals helping women achieve their health goals through natural and holistic means. I have begun eating foods that align more with my Ayurvedic body type, Pitta, and I have to tell you that Jerry and I are learning so much about cooking some of the foods that we actually are enjoying cooking and enjoying eating that previously gave me some stomach issues. Some of the foods that I stayed away from, like some raw veggies, even some that we had in our garden that I just wasn't really eating and Jerry was eating, I cook and I use more seasonings with them and actually eat them and enjoy them. I meet weekly with my Ayurvedic team. They're not rushed. They educate me on lifestyle habits that align with my body type. You can have this experience too. Murdaugh is offering our listeners a free 15-minute consult to address your health concerns naturally through the Ayurvedic lifestyle. You can book with the link in the show notes and save when you move forward with their program. Use code NIRVA20, that is NIRVA20. You can also visit arneradventures.com/Murdaugh for more info. I look forward to hearing about your journey with Murdaugh. And now back to the show. I'm going to read Dennis's theory. And then we're all three, since the jury is in deliberations, we're all three going to say what we think. If he's going to be guilty, not guilty. Okay, so Dennis's theory is Alex went down to the kennel to shoot Paul. Since Paul left guns all over, which he was known to do, Alex just picked up what was down there. Maggie heard the shotgun, came to see what happened, started running. The shotgun ran out of ammo. Alex picked up the blackout, which was probably there because it was Paul's favorite. Alex started chasing a running Maggie and unloaded on her. That's why she was shot so many times. There was an hour before he called 911. During that time, he showered, hid the guns and his clothes, and went to his mother's house. The timeline works, and with some planning, it's feasible. Boat wreck was the catalyst because his money issues would come to light and Paul needed to go. Killing Paul would take care of that. He had to kill Maggie because he would inherit Moselle, which is the house, the property with the kennels and everything, and could borrow more money to cover his financial issues. We don't know if the pills had anything to do with it. He lied about the amount because his body would shut down. The money to Cousin Eddie, which if you watch the show, the documentaries, you'll know about Cousin Eddie. The money to Cousin Eddie was a profitable side hustle to deal in drugs. It's a viable theory.
Yeah.
I agree with that. All right. So they're in deliberations. And by the time this airs, we may know an answer. Mom, what do you think? And what do you think that the jury is going to come back with?
I think it's going to be a hung jury. I think he's guilty. I can't see why anybody would not think guilty. But based on all of my research of other fanatics, devotees to this murder mystery, so to speak, there's so many people that I'm hearing that said he's innocent. I don't think he's innocent, but if he's found not guilty, it's because the prosecution didn't tie up the murders. They concentrated so much on the financial stuff that Maggie and Paul got lost in it. That's why I just thought I needed to get in the car, go down there and help them. Mm-hmm. More than likely, you're going to see a hung jury.
Okay, Jerry, what do you think? And what do you think the jury is going to come back with?
Well, from all I've heard, I feel that he's guilty. And I think I'm just hoping that I don't see how the jury could not see it the way I do. So I think they're going to find him guilty.
Okay. He is guilty. Mm-hmm. But I think the jury is going to come back not guilty.
I think, either one of us could be right. I just don't see how anybody could listen to the obvious testimony. The kennel video alone convicts him.
We haven't talked about this, and God, we could just keep going on, but we got to wrap this up. Mm-hmm. Sold me was the cell phone data.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The cell phone data, the OnStar and cell phone data.
Yeah.
Sold me.
That car, it literally told you when the door was open, when lights in the car would come on, everything.
I know.
And then you overlay the cell phone data, and Maggie's phone was not found with her. But you see where Maggie's phone had stopped, and then it was picked up, and it's making the same step, so to speak, as Alex until it goes away at the place where it was found on the side of the road.
Right.
And then Alex goes on, but Maggie's never moves again. So I think that yes. Verdict? What's the verdict? Okay. Verdicts. They've got the verdict in.
Okay. Oh my God. Does quit usually mean?
Usually. Yeah, it usually means it's guilty. We've got to pause this. Look at Alec now.
Yeah. Oh, wow. We're recording.
Okay.
Does his face say stressed? But look, there will be an appeal, and he'll probably get the verdict overturned because of the financial shit.
It might be not guilty. They might have said prosecution didn't prove it.
I just don't want to believe that. I
don't want to believe it either.
Docket number 2022 GS 15 00592, the state of South Carolina, county of Colleton, in the Court of General Sessions in the term of 2022, July, the state versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant, indictment for murder, SC code 16-3-0010, CDR code 0116. Okay. Guilty verdict. Signed by the forelady.
Wow.
3/2/23.
Wow.
Docket number 2022-GS-15-00593. The state of South Carolina, county of Colleton, in the Court of General Sessions, the July term of 2022. The state versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant, indictment for murder, SC code 16-3-0010, CDR code 0116, verdict guilty, signed by the forelady, date 3/2/23.
Oh, wow.
Docket number 2022-GS15-00595. The state of South Carolina, county of Colleton, Court of General Sessions, July term 2022. The state versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant. Indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. SC code -16-23-0490. CDR code 0549. Verdict guilty. Signed by the foreperson of the jury. Date 3/2/23.
You knew those were going to be guilty.
Docket number 2022 GS-15-00594. The state of South Carolina, county of Colleton, Court of General Sessions, July term 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant. Indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. SC Code 16-23-0490. CDR Code 0549. Verdict, guilty. Signed by the foreperson of the jury, 3-2-23.
Thank you. Madam Forelady and members of the jury, if that is the verdict of each and every juror, please let it be known by raising your right hands.
Okay, so we did not stop the podcast. We were about to wrap up, and Dennis, my stepdad, walked in, and we were kind of perturbed at first because we were like, why would he interrupt the podcast of my mom recording? And you heard him say, verdict is in. Can we even believe that happened while we were recording?
I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it.
So much fun.
And we literally paused it for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And then we had a verdict.
Yeah. And Jerry won.
And Jerry won. So if you were listening to this, of course, it was all consecutive. You heard it and bam, bam, bam. And now you know it by now anyway. But I think it was super exciting the way it happened on our podcast.
Sure was.
I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. The thing is we were all hoping for this. Jerry just had the confidence.
Jerry is a glass half full person. I mean,
I had by far the least knowledge, and I think that kind of helped me.
Probably.
I think it sort of did, because you all had so much knowledge to think that maybe there was some problems with the conviction. I really didn't. I just looked at the obvious things and thought, well, they got to feel like I do.
I mean, I just can't believe it. That was so quick. I wonder, okay, so they left today at what? 4 or 5?
It wasn't 5. It was probably about 4 to 4:30, somewhere in there.
Okay, so they literally took 3 hours.
You know, we've been talking about our niece, my niece, your cousin, Jenna. We're getting texts. She thinks that Buster didn't react. I disagree with that. And I'll have to get there and explain it to her. But yeah, I think he did react. I think that you could see toward the end, you could see he was starting to cry.
Yeah. We thought he was smiling, but that smile was kind of like the smile. And then his face was turning really red. And then it was turning into a cry.
Yeah. I think he was trying really hard to give no emotion.
Yeah.
But Sister Lynn sure gave some emotion. She's already pissed. And the thing about Alec, before they announced it, he looked like he was shaking in his britches. And then when they called it, I think that he was still shocked that they did.
Yeah.
But there will be an appeal. There will be an appeal on this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And Betty is very excited this is over and she wants our full attention. So we'll wrap it up. But what an exciting podcast. We had our expert correspondent. Mom, I don't know what you're going to do with your time now, but you're going to have to move on to another true crime case.
I know.
And we're going to have to bring you back on and talk about ways that we can, like Jerry said, divert our woes and stressors away and think about how we're so grateful. And in your gratitude practice today, you definitely need to write down that you're so thankful that you're not Alex Murdaugh. And you know what? You're not the chicken.
You're not the chicken.
Because Bubba got that chicken. So that chicken's gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mom, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Have me back on when we start the Idaho murders.
Oh,
yeah, that comes out in June. So we'll have some time, but that's just time for me to prepare.
Oh, we definitely will. Okay, that's a diversion from our daily stressors.
This is one of those trials that you will look back on and somebody will say, what were you doing when the verdict came in for the Murdaugh murders?
We know what we were doing.
Sure as heck
Tell Dennis thank you, because
because he was instructed that he could not touch the door unless there was a verdict, and he had to knock twice before.
And this was big news for the pod. Big news for the pod. Remember Mandy Matney, the Arners Adventures podcast, got the scoop.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for this. This was wonderful. Yeah, and we love you.
Oh, thank you.
I bet nobody tells Nancy Grace they love her when she gets off of their show.
Bombshell tonight.
Hey, for real.